Hey guys, today what I'm going to do is take my trusty Yamaha TTR dirt bike and make it street legal. But all the control switches on, power on, very straightforward, very simple to use. Turn signal, my horn, headlight and my main beam. Everything required for a street legal. I think about $170. So basically it's going to cost me to convert this from a dirt bike to a street bike. Depending on where you live, obviously there's different laws, different states. So check those through your local DMV and some forums online to find out what you actually need to do. Most of the times it's literally just adding a horn, some indicators, brake lights and a wiring harness. That's about it really. So for this particular bike I've got 10 components that I need to add, and it is those exactly. Tail light and brake light, I've already got that on this bike, but it's not wired up, so I'll just be wiring that up. The left and right, front and rear indicators, a horn. If you haven't got a headlight, you're going to need to buy a headlight. This has already got a headlight. The switches to control all those things, a brake master cylinder switch to control the brake lighting, and obviously a control switch and indicator switches on and off. And at least one mirror. For this type, I've got a little bendy thing here, which I'm going to use. I bought all of this from Tusk online. Find out what type of bike you need, look what it is, see what you need to buy. I'll put the components that I bought in links underneath so you can see it all. I think about $170 to convert this from a dirt bike to a street bike, and then obviously whatever charges DMV charge me for registering it. First thing you got to do is basically strip it down so you can get to the wiring. So that in that case, take off all the panels, take off the seat, take off the fuel tank. So that's exactly where we're going to start. So we're going to start by disconnecting the fuel line. A couple of little things I like to do when I'm doing this. Just cover this area with a rag, helps catch any excess fuel. I've got a little bit of a shrink wrap here which I use to cover over the entry into the carb, and then I just take a regular old screw and I stuff this in the fuel pipe, stop it leaking out, and you'll see what I mean when I go ahead and do this. So we just undo this clamp. Make sure the fuel's turned off obviously. Got my little screw ready. Some fuel drips out, and then just put this in the end, stops any fuel dripping out, and then take my little plastic piece of shrink wrap and stick it over there because we don't want any dirt to get inside there while we've got the fuel tank off. To remove the seat on this particular bike I have two bolts, one here, both 10mm. Now, like I said, this bike is kind of different to a bunch of other bikes. It's already got a battery, it's already sort of half street legal, so it's already got a wiring harness in it. It already has a tail light and a brake light, but no switching to components to actually make the brake light activate. So the wires come underneath here, here's the lines, all three lines here for the brake. And so I'm just going to use those on my new one. And then I'll just figure out a way to change this here. Now the key thing here when you're doing your wiring harness is to follow the wires that are already here, so that way you don't get any pinch points and you don't get anywhere where the heat of the engine or anything like that is possibly going to melt the sheets on the wiring. On this particular kit, the rear mudguard, if you like, comes with this, and what it's meant to do on a regular dirt bike that doesn't already have a light installed, you're meant to just sit this on the underneath of your regular dirt bike, like so, and then attach your inline indicators, or blinkers, whatever you want to call them, right here. So I'm just going to, no reason why I should change this, I'm just going to take this off. Wiring light, like I said, already in here. I've just disconnected the 3 bullets from here, and then from there. So I'm not even going to use this part at all. And convert this into that play there by simply just cutting and putting that end on here. That way I can keep the rest of the wiring harness exactly the same. So as my mudguard, my rear mudguard already has a tail light and brake light installed, and the wiring is already here. Like I said, it's just the actual pressure switches that are not included with it. I'm going to use my original tail guard, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these little inline blinkers, indicators here, drill the holes on there, put it on there like this. I'm going to undo this screw and take this rubber mount off the back here, and I'll use this as my template to sit on here like this, and then I can use that to drill my holes. Feed my wires through either side and then just thrush them along here back to where my harness is going to sit, right on top of my airbox. Now you can see what it looks like as it's fitted, like so. On the other side, I've just started to thread this through here. I've got my hole for my cable and my hole for my screw to mount the actual light onto it. We'll get that. In the hole. Take a little dab of glue. Making sure they're relatively even. Zip tie them all together and just let them follow the way out of the original harness. Okay, so the thing to remember here is when you're putting your harness in, alright, you want to try and get it somewhere where it's not going to be pinching and somewhere where it's going to be sort of relatively safe. So if you can follow the old lines here, I'm just going to follow this around here and then obviously bring all this up here and tuck it out behind the headlamp once I take the headlamp off, and that'll be the front controls. But I'm concentrating it on bit by bit, so I'm working on the back part at the moment, get the rear wired up. Everything, like I say, is plug and play. Just got to put some ends on the indicators. They're already color coded. There is a wiring diagram that actually comes with the wiring harness. Very straightforward, very simple to use. And then, like I say, my original light, I'm just going to change the fitting on this so that it matches up and fitting on there. So I can either cut this off to make bullets for it, or I can cut these off and put the end on. But that means I've got to do two types. So I'm just going to go with changing this to a bullet format to matches the rest of them, and then go ahead and just connect it up to this. The indicators, they actually come with the little bag with the bullets already in there and everything, so you really needed something to crimp them on with. It's absolutely brilliant. Now I've got my wiring hooked up from my rear light and my rear indicators. So this is how it looks at the moment. We've got that. Wires are underneath the mudguard here, around here. I've tucked them underneath my air intake so it's not actually blocking my air intake here. My battery lead, I'm just going to have to run around, I guess, like this, and down to my battery. But we'll do that last. Making sure I don't punch anything here. Coming across here, and then I've got another nice little thing I can just sit on top of right in there and bring this up into the headlight, which I'm about to do right now. Now I've ran my wires from here up the harness. I've undone the screws on my actual headlamp that's only on the bike, so I'm taking the headlamp off. Just a plug and play release on there, and there that is there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mount my front indicators on here like so. So they're hanging out of here because it's about the only place I can put them. I can't really drill them into the light like this, so I'm going to have to mount them so they drop down here like this. So as I can see, I went ahead and mounted my front indicators on here. Literally just drilled a little hole in there, thread them through the back, and just going to go ahead and connect them up once I also get everything else in place. Final part is wiring up the battery leads to the positive and negative, and then connecting up. Now for mounting my horn, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use this little metal bracket right in here. I'm going to drill a slight little hole through here and then mount my horn in here behind the headlight. Just put a self-tapping screw in there and that'll do the trick to mount the horn. There's a million places you can mount it, but that's what I'm going to choose to do. So to finish off the wiring process here, I've literally just, like I said, I drilled a small hole in there to connect my horn up. I also put my flasher unit on there as well, so it just kills two birds with one stone. I've taped up all my blinker wires together to keep them, even though they are waterproofed with these little rubber things, I've just taped them up to make them a bit neater and a bit tidier. Now for the headlight with using the master switch is a bit more complicated than it looks. So because this bike already had a headlight, what I'm having to do is use the original power line, the ground and the power, which are both combined together to go onto the low beam, which is here on the original headlight. Because most headlights are wired up for low beam only. Because this this headlamp switch has both high and low beam, what I'm having to do is take, like I said, the original line will stay there and connect into the black line on here. Then the two lines from the new harness wiring kit, I cut the ends off, threaded them through this switch here. So you can see here I have a spade fitting on one, and I haven't put the spade fitting on the other one yet. I've still got it in my hand here just to do that, and then eventually they'll just pull them back into there, which is where, I don't know if you can see that in there, the original black line is in there. So I cut that off with that there. As you can see, that's not coming from the original switch, that's coming from the main harness on the bike. So with these wires coming out of the new harness now, the blue wire is our high beam wire, and that's going to connect to the original yellow wire here on the headlamp, and the white is the low beam, which is going to go ahead and connect to the green wire. So I'll get on with putting those together and connect it up, and we'll see how it works. Like I said, black to black, white to green, and blue to yellow. That gives me my off, my low beam, and my high beam. So just to check sure everything's working and that nothing is actually shorting itself out, we can go ahead and turn the power on. So my rear light's on, my headlight's on, my main beam's on, my horn is working, my left turn signal, front and rear, and my right turn signal, front and rear, and nothing is shorting out, which is good to know. So last but not least, what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and remove the ball nut from the rear brake master cylinder, and we're going to replace it with this one, which has the wire. It also has the double compression washers on here, so make sure you don't lose those when you take it off. Now for this part, you want to try and get the bike up as level as possible, and try to not lose any fluid coming out of here. If you do, obviously you're going to want to make sure you get some brake fluid, bearing in mind whether you got .3, .4 or .5. All dirt bikes really should be running .4 because it's silicone based and doesn't absorb water. So it's a 12mm to take off, and a 14mm you're going to need to put back on again. Now this connection coming from the harness that we installed, and these have no polarity, so it doesn't matter which way you connect it, obviously as long as you connect it. And then with everything else, I'm going to go ahead and test it before I actually put it to bed, shall we say. See here, the tail light is on, fitted up my wires, this, that and the other, finished them off, put the old foot on the brake, and bingo, we have a brake light. After my wiring's complete, everything's hooked up. Rear lights, mirror, front lights, front blinkers, all wired round. All tidied up nicely through here, tucked in all quite nicely here. You can actually lift your air vent up here a little bit and tuck it underneath. And then we'll put the bike back together and she's good to go. There she is. The only thing missing now is my plate, so I need to take it down to the DMV, get her registered. But all the control switches on, pretty straightforward. Just ignition on, power on. I've then got my turn signal, my horn, my rear light's actually on already, so you can see that on there. Then when I hit the back brake, I've got a brake light, my mirror, my headlight and my main beam. Everything required for a street legal bike. Now just take it down to the DMV, get them to inspect it, and hopefully we'll get a legal to ride on the road. It will save me loading her up to the truck every time I want to go out on the dirt. So I hope this was helpful. If not, I'm sure you can always find another video to look at.